Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry, and with me, as always,
Jack Ripner. Jack Eddie of Edward is Truth.
Today we're talking about Red Eye, released August 19th, 2005. This was a Wes Craven movie that I think was very successful, or at least like it did well at the time, but it came out and disappeared afterwards. Apparently, from what I understand, because it was just released on 4K, like a Blu-ray 4K combo pack, which I bought, but it only ever got a DVD release, so that was the only way that you could really watch it up until very recently. And this came out in 2005, obviously, so this was amidst the release of Cursed, because that came out earlier in the year as well, which was supposed to come out years and years earlier, so it was kind of like pushing all these Wes Craven movies out together, and I think this one just kind of got fell to the wayside, or just probably because of the critical response to Cursed.
We can get into that. Shall I do a premise before we just jump in?
Yes, for anyone who is not familiar, and for those who are and just want a refresher.
This one goes pretty deep. Okay.
Okay.
After attending the funeral of her grandmother in Dallas, Lux Atlantic Hotel manager Lisa meets Jack Ripner at the airport and subsequent Miami flight, where they are seated together. Jack soon reveals he needs Lisa to change the hotel room of an important American politician to facilitate a terrorist attempt on the politician's entire family. If she fails, Lisa's father will be killed by a hitman. But will she find some way to avert all potentially catastrophic fatalities on this Red Eye?
Yeah.
And this is not a traditional Wes Craven movie in the sense, like, it's not a horror movie. It's mostly it's a thriller. But there are definitely horror elements to it, and I think especially in the last act, it's very Scream-esque. Like, I was getting a lot of Ghostface and Sydney kind of like running around a house. I don't know if you picked up on that as well.
For me, it felt more because it could easily be that, but I mean, it's like slasher adjacent, but also action adjacent. Like, it could be as much an action climax, but the reason I think the reason why it's probably leaning more into horror is just because the monstrous state that we find Jack at by the time we reach him there. Like, he's had that. Once you see someone's jugular, is that their windpipe like penetrated by a Dracula pen and wander about and struggle while people recoil, like, that was rough. Like, that was oof. And it just puts him in a place. He's already been monstrous up until that point in a very subtle way. We'll get there, but all he's going for broke in that.
I think just because this is Wes Craven, and he will typically fall back on what he's familiar with, and I think that's why when I view those scenes, it's kind of like a cat and mouse game of her maneuvering around the house that she grew up in, that she knows the terrain, very much like Sydney in her bedroom in Scream 1, like closing the closet door on the door, and even on the Stab 3 set of like stuff like that. Like I definitely get that, and I just sort of like looking at Cillian Murphy and just like imagining Ghostface, peering into a room. So, you just switch them out and you see it's just like the Wes Craven direction, and you can really get a sense of that. And I think, I'd only seen this once before, closer to when it came out. And I even forgot about this movie a lot, but I'm glad that I did revisit it, because it really did, not that there was ever any doubt, but it really reinstilled just my love for Wes Craven, and probably some of the things that I feel are missing in the newer Scream movies, and kind of like dipping back into his other works and feeling satisfied by getting that from these movies instead.
I can understand that. I did see it in the theater. That was the last time that I saw it. I only saw it the once before, aside from streaming it off. It's as of this recording, it's on HBO Max, so it's accessible. Anybody who wants to can watch it, and I'd advise you to, actually. But
I would recommend that you actually buy the. I mean, I'm a strong proponent of physical media collecting.
Sure.
But, I would say buy it because I think it's worth it. It's a great movie if you are a fan of Wes Craven and collecting his stuff, and it goes towards his estate. So I think that's a worthy cause. I think that's his estate is deserving of our money.
Absolutely. But that said, I remember seeing it in the theater. I went with my sister, and I remember it was the new Wes Craven movie. I didn't know anything about Cursed going in, and I think we discussed that much when we talked about it. Like you bringing up the movie to me was my first kind of like clue that there was even a movie called Cursed that Wes Craven had ever directed, and then I watched it, and oh boy, watch that pod or listen to it.
Episode 17, yes.
Look at you. But so we went into the theater, and I remember the poster even like just very, very dark, and then in red letters, that's very Scream-like to me. It just says Red Eye. And I remember just seeing that Rachel McAdams, who was very hot at the time, as far as just like being in demand and like
Mean Girls, yeah,
and
George.
Yes, and I just remember thinking, I will watch this because hadn't The Notebook come out already too? I don't remember when.
Probably. You know what? I've never seen The Notebook.
Oh, I have. I saw that in the theater too. Not a fan of the movie, but her work is solid. Yeah. Everybody's work in that movie is solid. I'm just not fond of the story. But anyway, she. But I knew she was like kind of one of those young actresses who it's like, oh, you're going to be good in anything. And then I found out she's working with Wes Craven. I think all I knew Cillian Murphy from was maybe the zombie movie. Help me out.
28 Days Later.
That one.
Yeah.
And I really didn't. It wasn't him that I didn't like, but I couldn't like disengage Cillian Murphy from the character he was playing because he just seemed. If we ever discuss this movie, we can go into it. But he just seemed like as you would usually put it, like a very non-character to me. And he was one of the leads we were supposed to be following. And everybody who I talked to about the movie would not shut up for 28 Days Later about how hot he was. And I was like, there's something almost reptilian about his gaze. Like there's something that I don't feel warmed by. In fact, I feel chilled and unnerved by, like, he's just waiting. Like, he's just thinking about how he's going to devour me in a way that is not a turn on at all.
He has, an intensity to his look, for sure. And absolutely reptilian is a good way to... Reptilian Murphy is what I'm going to call him for the rest of this.
Never put that one together. Bravo. That was good. That's just
my propensity for dad jokes,
No, it was good. That was good. You know how I feel about your dad jokes.
Well, I mean, Wes Craven, as far as I understand it, hired him based on just like his eyes alone. Just like, he met with him and just like, sat down. I think that Cillian Reptilian wanted it really badly that he actually flew out after his wedding. Yeah, I'm just looking at this as like 2 days before his wedding. Sorry, to have lunch with Wes Craven, just to meet with him. And Craven later gave him the part, saying that his eyes won him over.
I get it, and they work. A lot works in this movie, though. But okay, so I'm in the theater though, and I'm all revved up, and I'm like excited to see this thing. Because I didn't think Cillian Murphy was a bad actor, so I'm just kind of like, let's see what he does with this.
Yeah.
And I just remember first impression was disappointment because for whatever reason, I don't even remember if I'd seen a trailer or a teaser prior to going in. But something in the expectation of it, told me I was going to get a horror movie, like a horror movie on a plane. And I was really looking forward to that. I for whatever reason, I really needed to be scared that week. And I was hoping, horror master Wes Craven was going to chill me to the bone with this thing. And it turns out to be like a very, very well made, basically suspense thriller with like some action-y or horror-y points thrown in. And it just wasn't what I was looking for. So I left it not thinking much more about it after I left. I remember just kind of being like, oh, well, okay, can't all be winners, which I'm stunned by now. Because after rewatching it late last night, it was after midnight, and I thought I was going to watch this pretty soon before we started recording, but my gears wouldn't stop turning. So I'm like, well, what better time to watch Red Eye than after midnight? Like, let's put it on. Let's see if I stay awake. And oh my God, did I? For the whole, what is it, like 90 minutes or less?
Oh, it's
somewhere
like,
in that vicinity?
Like 80. So here, I'll check
something
right now.
Yeah.
And an hour and 25 minutes. And that's
hour and 25 minutes.
Not including, because this is back when I think that they still had the credits at the beginning. Right. Although I think that those were probably like overlaid on like actual like establishing footage, characters and stuff.
The wallet getting stolen and stuff.
Yeah, absolutly. Or because they were showing like the truck with the fish and the ice and all that. But yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just okay. That was amazing.
Okay, before we get into that though, because the end credits probably eat up like 5 minutes of that. So I'd say it's an 80-minute movie. It's super efficient. Right. Like there's absolutely nothing wasted here. Movies are not made like this anymore, and they should be, as far as I'm concerned. But I did want to touch upon something you said, because you said that you hadn't seen any of the trailers. And actually, there are 2 trailers for this movie, because the first one that they put out there, Wes Craven and his team were up in arms about, because they're just like, you're lying to people right now. Because what it was is, most of the stuff that is in the final trailer of just kind of like establishing the character, the Lisa character, and then like meeting him in the airport and then sitting next to him on the plane. But then it does this weird thing where, when you recognize that there's a threat with him, and everything goes dark except for his eye, and it turns red. And then it's just like red eye. And it's just like, so, I mean, I guess you could say it's a teaser trailer, but it definitely suggested more of like a supernatural sort of thing, or like a demonic thing. And they were not happy about it. And they're just like, look, you can't market this movie as that. And maybe you did see a trailer. Maybe that's the one you did, and that's why you walked out of it upset, because you see something like that, and then you get the movie, and people would be disappointed. So then they put out the other trailer, which was more accurate to what the movie was, and word of mouth was good. Like, it was just like I should have looked up the box office gross, but I mean, just like critically, everyone was happy. They thought it was a great film. So I think that meeting people's expectations definitely helped that, and that's why like misleading trailers, again, that's something that should be, you want to cancel something, cancel misleading trailers. That's what I say. Oh yeah. And trailers that spoil too much. There's a happy medium in between there somewhere, that what they should hit, and it doesn't happen anymore.
Give a premise, give a little seduction, and then don't flash us. Yeah. Anyway,
don't lie to us.
Movie trailer.
Yeah.
Okay. So all that said, okay. So the fish. I'm glad you brought it up, because I forgot about it, and I was so engrossed in this movie. I did not take notes. I had it there. I was ready to, but I just ended up watching the movie.
Good.
And but what I remember as I was watching The Fish, what would have been probably my first note was what a way to like create, I don't know if it's visual interest, but just like non-contextual interest, because I'm just like, fish on ice. What's going on? wait, what am I looking at and why? Yeah. And I don't remember ever really having an answer, and I don't need one. But it's a lovely hook. There's another thing a word that kept occurring to me while I was watching the movie, and that's Hitchcockian. I just kept thinking, this feels like maybe the most Hitchcock in style and progression that Wes Craven has ever been. I still have yet to see every Wes Craven movie, but as of today and what I have seen, but as of, oh God, that sounds great. But as of right now, like this is the one that in feel and in just the stakes, like, because it's so incredibly behavior based, but there's a methodology to it. It doesn't meander. It doesn't and also all the things that we learn seem to pay off one way or another, whether it's just getting to know a character like in a way that makes them even more interesting to us, so therefore they're more compelling to watch, or if it's going to affect the plot later and pay off in that vein. And I'm all about it. Like, I was really excited.
Yeah.
As I was
And I agree with you completely. Like, this is the most Hitchcockian that Wes Craven has gone. And again, like what you're saying, like all those things of just sort of like the visual clues, because it's like, here's something that we don't know what it means. And it's going to come back later, because that's something that Wes Craven has always done. Like, everything has a purpose, including the pen that we see and all that. And it's brilliant filmmaking. And I feel that a lot of filmmakers nowadays will put things in because they're just like, well, that looks interesting, but it has nothing to do with anything. And by the end of the movie, you might have forgotten about it, but when you go back and rewatch it, you're just like looking at it like, what is the point of this? Where something like Red Eye, you might miss I don't even think you would miss it, because it's like such a direct correlation to what comes back later. But even if you had missed it, when you watch it again, you're just like, wow, like just the setup of this and how, efficiently everything was put together. And just in terms of like character stuff, because there's seeds planted of certain things, and you don't find out everything about the characters right away, but then it comes back later, and it comes back in a very enriching and fulfilling way that not only tells us more about the characters, but is used as an excellent segue to then transition into whatever the next act or like the action that's going to follow that's going to bring us to the next place. So Wes Craven knows to not like blow his load all at once or at certain times. Like, he's very precise with it, and he knows when he needs to use certain things. And people nowadays, they'll like look at a lot of like older Scream fans who've been with the franchise since its inception, and they'll just be like, you just have a hard-on for Craven or whatever. And it's just like, no, like Wes Craven is actually a genius, and we're not overrating him. Like, you go back and watch not all of his filmography, because he definitely has some duds in there, but when he does succeed, he passes with flying colors. And I think that more people need to understand that, like, we're not just talking him up for the sake of it. Like, they're like, the man was a brilliant filmmaker.
I mean, it's funny because on the heels of that, like, I'm just thinking about a quote I heard. It might seem unrelated, but wait. That Mary Rogers, the daughter of Richard Rogers, the composer who of Rogers and Hammerstein, Oklahoma and Carousel and all, King and I and all those, and more, Sound of Music. And I remember her in an interview discussing her father, which she's interviewed about him a lot, but she said once, he had a string of failures before he met Oscar Hammerstein. And she said, if you're lucky, you have a string of failures because you get to learn from them. You get to continually build. So if we were to, I don't think it just applies to composers. The point that I think I'm making about Wes Craven is, I don't feel like he made a string of failures, but I feel like there's something to behold and to learn from when you witness every stage of the career, when you can when you can contextualize that, and you can better understand, like, where were you at this point in your life, what was motivating you then? Like, you know, like what was even within the Scream franchise, what was motivating Wes when he was getting Scream 3 done was very different than what was motivating him when he got the first one done. And Scream 2 as well. Like each one of those movies, there's a very distinct flavor. They're all bound together by like the Scream formula that we always reference here, but of the OG trilogy. But they were all different turns at bat, as it were, for him, and each hit, to keep my baseball metaphor going, was uniquely itself, its own thing, and that's why this movie, it really bummed me out when it was over, because I thought, I haven't thought about this movie in ages. I don't know many people who discuss it. It deserves to be talked about. So I'm glad it is, even though, you know, yes, buy physical media. But it makes me happy that it's streaming on HBO Max at the moment, because people who might not otherwise be able to catch it might take a chance on it and watch it on, you know, their phone or on their laptop and end up getting hooked like I did.
I just want to add, like, buying physical media and supporting like Wes Craven's estate, that only goes further to help, you know, boost future projects of just, you know, when, you know, like for instance, A Nightmare on Elm Street continuation, which has been teased for years. I mean, not to say that we necessarily need it, but I mean, if people who are wanting it, like, that's, you know, to show that, you know, Wes Craven is still relevant by supporting everything that he's done. It's just more money into that unit that's going to propel everything else Wes Craven moving forward. Because I know that Steve Miner, Steve Miner, but Sean Cunningham, Friday the 13th, that he got his start in porn. Like, he was just filming porn.
Flesh flicks, thank you very much.
Flesh flicks. And
they were like kitschy fun.
Yeah, and was Wes Craven as well? Like, I think, isn't that not where he got his start too? Or because, like, he worked with them. So I think that, you know, just going by, you know, what he did. So I think that, so that's it.
He worked on the crew for like things like there was like this, you know, if you help me out with this thing that I'm doing over the weekend, you know, you can write your own thing and I'll help you out, kind of thing. You know, it was a mutual back scratch for these two businessmen. Yeah.
Right. Because, like, Wes is a perfect example of someone who came into the business, the industry, and he worked from the bottom up. Like, he had a hand in every aspect of filmmaking. He didn't just show up one day and was like, I'm a director. Like, I don't know, like Rob Zombie. Or, you know, not to be shady. But, you know, like, so, you know, when he works with people and they have stories of working with Wes Craven, and they, you know, talk about all of the influences and just like conversations that he would have with them, because he understood every aspect of it, that he could, you know, have that empathy and meet them on that level. And that's why everyone talks about him with such fondness.
He's been, I might cry, but he's been referenced by numerous crew members he had worked with throughout his career when they were, you know, kids, you know, like late teens or early mid-20s and whatnot. And they always said the same thing. He seemed much more like a kindly old English professor than a director when you were collaborating with him, because number one, the streak of the poet, he always, even though he was a very savvy businessman, and he always recognized at the end of the day, it's a business, and anyone who ignores that is just shooting themselves in the foot, to paraphrase a quote that he said. But also just like this need for things to be endowed with meaning and relevance to today, and to understand that today's news is timeless, is everyday's news. Mm-hmm. Things don't change unless we change them. Like, I mean, and to plug those kinds of themes into his movies, and that's why I think you can probably pull any movie of his off the shelf and discuss what is this about really, and have a very interesting conversation. Even with this one, I think that was the thing that worked for me, was the fact that strategically everything's laid out, and it has this incredible are one of my favorite words, trajectory, driving it inexorably, forward until the end, until it's finally over, and then we get like a, like anything but what is it that she drank?
Sea breeze.
Something breeze.
Yeah.
The sea breeze. Anything but a sea breeze. High five. End of movie. They didn't high five, but they may as well have.
Yeah.
But I wasn't.
Freeze frame, like jump up in air, high five.
Exactly. with Rachel McAdams and Emma Pillsbury from Glee, who I love. That's not her. That's her character's name from Glee. I don't remember the actress's real name. I'll look it up in a second. But another thing. I already kind of touched on it, but the fact that like the characters, particularly the two, there's really two characters that we get to know very well in this movie, and everybody else just kind of like is there to keep the plot going or to be incentive, like her father, like even though he's played by Brian Cox, who was a master and who we've discussed before with our Trick or Treat pod. When he played
that was the old podcast,
miserable...
yeah. But we haven't done.
Oh, that was the old one. We haven't talked.
Yeah, we haven't done Trick or Treat on the Cherry Picker.
Oh God, I can't wait. Okay,
but yeah, Brian Cox was the original Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter. He was also for any X-Men fans, he was Stryker in X2. He might have appeared in some of the other movies. I don't remember, but he's very recognizable. You'd know.
Oh yeah, he works all the time.
Yeah. Great
mostly
character
these days
actor.
playing kind of like playing a lot of domineering paternal figures at this stage in his career, and for like the last 10 years, but always game and always interesting and so I mean you get an actor like that playing the father, and he doesn't feel like a supporting character. He feels like a component of this of Rachel McAdams' character's life, and that's because she cares so much about him. We care so much about him. But oh God, there's so much to cover. But okay, so
well,
the hook for yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say on the note of just him playing the father, because I listened to there's two commentaries. There's the old one from the DVD that had Wes Craven and Patrick Lussier, maybe Marianne Madalena. But then I listened to the new one, which was Patrick Lussier as well, and he just like in that specific moment where we're introduced to the characters, because the conversation that she has with her father is on the telephone, and just to make that scene more dynamic and just to show the audience that like she is her father's daughter, both of them are like constantly moving while they're talking on the phone, because she's at the airport, she's trying to get to her gate, he's at home, but he's just kind of like doing things around the
shiftless.
house, and it very much feels like like even at Scream 2, that the opening scene that we love, and not the opening scene but the meeting all
as
the
everybody's moving
characters
into position,
and just like Gale Weathers like coming around the bend, like they're threatening to what like it's just like Wes Craven knows, it's just like he can take some boring old like it's just like expositional stuff and just bring it to life, but also kind of like infuse character personalities and relationships into that moment as well. And I mean, if there's one thing I love more than Wes Craven movies, it's listening to Wes Craven commentaries, because I want to hear every moment and just soak it up of him justifying his decisions and why they're so important. Because when we watch these movies, we see greatness, like we know that like what we're seeing is brilliant filmmaking, but we don't understand why. So that's why it's nice to have that as a companion piece, to just hear him explain his reasons.
Right, to put, and also just to go to this most recent example you were discussing of them just moving into position, as it were, as well. Like again, maybe not even moving to position, but just on their feet. Like the movie itself is actively mobile, and everybody is so busy not focusing on expositing things for our benefit, because they have a place they need to be, or they have like he's preoccupied with her and he just wants to know she's okay, and she's like, Dad, I need to get her, and you can't, are you sure? Don't, and she has to go on and like do her thing. But that's the thing, is like, because the way it's written, because one thing also, just like, because you were talking about seeing Ghostface in the climax and everything like that, and I'm sure there must have been some of that in Wes Craven's motive for the way he shot it, but it was written by Carl Ellsworth and not Kevin Williamson, so there's that. But a story by Ellsworth and a guy named Dan Foos. I'm not familiar. Carl Ellsworth sounds familiar, but I don't know offhand Oh, he wrote the screenplay for Disturbia. The screenplay, he had a credit for Last House on the Left, the reboot, the remake. Did he? Yeah, he's got a screenplay credit. Wes Craven had the credit for the original, so he's referenced there. Anyway, so, an accomplished screenwriter, but because of the way they're written, and then because of the way the performances are executed and captured, there's an enormous amount of spontaneity where you just kind of, everything makes sense every step of the way. I feel like I understand why Rachel McAdams, I keep calling her just her full name, but Lisa, her character, why Lisa is kind of like tickled at being distracted by Jackson when she's first meeting him, because a lot of people find him attractive, and he is kind of charming in the beginning. Like I don't see him and go, no, alligator boy, ew, like I think like, well, he seems friendly, and he came to the aid of one of the service workers at the airport, like when she started, he took up her cause and everything like that, and that would dazzle me, certainly. Like if I see a guy defending a service worker who's just doing the best they can.
Yeah, he asserted his privilege, or just to show that, like,
totally.
for good.
I
like
put out toxicity.
Yeah, I like the fact as well that he's in that scene before we even meet him, because it's just like there's this establishing shot of, and he's standing behind her, and we don't know that he's a major player. Like if you had never seen any promotional material, you just put this movie on, you would see him as just a background extra at that point until he kind of comes in and says what he has to say. And that's a funny thing, because like you could show this to anyone, like preferably someone who's not familiar with Wes Craven, because then they might have some preconceived notions about what the movie is. But for example, if I put this movie on for my mother, it's just like, oh, here's a movie. I mean, she might assume that it's horror, because why would I put on anything else? But we'll just say for anyone, if they started to watch it, they had no idea, they might perceive this as a romantic comedy. So there's kind of a twist when they're on the plane, and then he's just kind of like, well, as it happens, like my business happens to be all about you. And then it's just, like, what are you talking about? And then there's that shift. Like that's where it's just like, oh, okay, now we're like, there's layers to this. So it's, that's another reason why we shouldn't watch trailers, but it just works on like such a great dynamic level of that, of just like the movie constantly switching and not really knowing what to expect.
Yeah, you bringing up like the romantic aspect also, nailing it down in that vein. Like I understand like what you're saying, because this movie could conceivably have just taken a turn where someone else is a terrorist on the plane, they take over the plane, and together Lisa and Jackson save the people on the plane. Yeah. And that could just be the movie that just opens exactly the same way. We know they're two decent people who aren't afraid to stand up for what's right. So like that's just like a microcosm of what's going to end up happening, what the ultimately like the whole movie's going to be about. But it's not. Yeah. But for me, when it started to turn, I think, because I remembered one thing about this movie. Mm-hmm. I remembered that Cillian Murphy made me uncomfortable, and that two things, I guess. He made me uncomfortable, and that he and Rachel McAdams had a lot of dialogue sitting in their airplane seats. That's all that I remembered. I don't remember how it ended. I don't remember if anybody died or didn't or what. So I didn't even remember that Brian Cox was in it and played her father, or that Kyle Gallner, little baby Kyle Gallner, was in it.
Oh my God.
Playing one.
Yeah, like basically just like a nothing role. I mean, like, but that's another thing that's so beautiful about Wes Craven movies, because they have so much life just in terms of like what's going on in the background. And first of all, the whole airplane was a set that was constructed on hydraulics, so they were actually like all the turbulence and stuff was like created. So there's this set, first of all, like the artistry behind that. But all of the extras were hired to be there for 6 weeks and sit in the same seat. Like, so like the job was like just sitting in a chair on an airplane for 6 weeks, and everyone had to come in, miserable. Look the same, wear the same clothes, all of this. And then you have these like technically day players of, you know, like that would be considered like the old lady or like the lady with the scarf or Kyle Gallner and his brother, or even the little girl, of just like these inconsequential people, but that just show that there first of all, there are stakes here. There's other people involved in the situation, but also just to create an atmosphere and like let us see that this is, you know, she is basically a prisoner surrounded by all of these people. There's nothing she can do. She can't,
in plain view.
She can't like call for help or anything. So she has to get crafty in you know, trying to think of these ways to, like, you know, within her predicament. And I think that's what allows this movie to constantly be interesting and never feel, because I mean, like, you put like write a movie on an airplane with two primary characters and have the whole thing just be their dialogue back and forth, like that is very easily to, you know, just get repetitive and tedious. And Wes Craven, of course, I mean, and not to discredit the writers as well, whose names I already forget, but, you know, like to be able to
Carl and Dan.
Carl and Dan, to be able to take this, because I think it's the first, it might be just over the hour mark that they get off the plane, and so much happens in that. And I feel like even like when we talked about Scream, because I think we're still at the part like before Principal Himbry is killed in that movie, and I feel like so much has happened, but we're still like just at 45 minutes, and it's so crazy to actually reflect on that. So it's just Wes Craven, like, just, you know, I don't want to say he can do no wrong, but I mean, like, when he does right, he does right.
I also wanted to say, like, because you were discussing the atmosphere of the background, or I don't know, background actors, but just like, you know, the non-principal roles. And one of the supporting characters credited as Nice Lady is the one who borrows the book, is played by an actress named Angela Patton, or Patton, I don't know how to pronounce it. But I recognized her. I was like, not only have I seen you in a movie before, and she's worked, you know, a lot, but I was like, not only have I seen you in a movie before, but I know I've seen you on an airplane before. And I just listened to her talk for a little bit, and I was like, you're the woman on the plane in, it's not a horror movie, but it's a movie that I've seen often called Home for the Holidays, starring Holly Hunter, and Robert Downey Jr. plays her gay brother, and it's really cool. But anyway, she's going on an airplane to go home for the holidays, and she's seated by this kind of obnoxious woman who's watching her snort nasal spray because she's got a cold. And she's just like, you know, the stuff that you're snorting is addictive, but of course you know that, don't you? Don't you? She's just really just too invasive, and don't talk to me. I'm just sitting here miserable. I don't need you crowding me and eating chicken. She eats like chicken up here and just sucking on the bones and stuff. She's gross. And I was like, oh my God, you're amazing. And here she is being this sweet lady. She
feels, I mean, I thought you were going to say you've seen her on an airplane before, because it's just like, I know her. She's everywhere. Like, I see her all the time because she is that woman on the airplane that's like reading a Dr. Phil book.
Who's also like
another thing that like probably has not aged that well is like the Dr. Phil shout outs in this movie.
Well, I wasn't just kind of like, hey everybody, Dr. Phil's the best. I didn't get that. But
I think it was just that was one, I mean, no, but it was one thing that like really aged this for me, because it's like, Dr. Phil is like, okay, because it's like, you know, his show probably just like started to get really popular around the time. Another thing that kind of aged this for me, which is just very esoteric, but the I keep forgetting what the government official guy, the one who's coming under attack. He's like the Secretary of Defense.
The politician Keefe.
Yeah.
Is his last
whatever.
name,
Well, whatever his position is. But anyway, his head of security is played by Colby Donaldson, who was played Survivor many times. He was the runner-up in Australian Outback. So I saw, just because I love Survivor, obviously, if you guys, Scream Survivor, subscribe to my Patreon so you can watch those episodes. But the real Survivor, no, I saw him immediately, and I think like 2005. Yeah, that makes sense, because he sort of had this like quasi-celebrity status after playing the show and came back to play several times. So I'm just like, okay. So I was like constantly looking for like the cameos and stuff. And I think most of them are more so just like people behind the scenes, like production wise, of just like that have worked with Wes Craven. Because there's, even listening to the commentary, because I'm pretty sure it was Marianne Madalena, because she's the one that's always like, oh, and that person is, do you remember them? They were the assistant of so-and-so. And I think the woman at the beginning, like the angry couple at the hotel, like the woman was actually one of like the studio execs that they just saw her and just like, wow, she would be great for that role. Just like the aura that she gives off, that personality of just like a really disgruntled guest at the hotel. And they told her about it, and she's just like, that's ridiculous, I'll do it. So yeah, just
and
like
go ahead.
No, and the what?
No, I was just going to say, because you brought up the hotel, I was just going to say the actress who plays Cynthia, I mentioned her, I called her Emma Pillsbury. Yeah. The actress's name is Jayma Mays. I just wanted to give her her due, because I thought she did a great job being the more character-y of the two hotel workers among her and Lisa. Lisa was obviously the one who had it down.
Yeah, she kind of has a like a Judy Greer quality to her, like a redheaded Judy. Like I could have seen Judy Greer in that role, because it's sort of like the quirky best friend. It's like the quirky hotel. Yeah.
Judy Greer's got that incredible muscle where she could have played either of the roles or both of them. Like she could have been.
She could have been the Fern Mayo. Exactly.
She could have been Fern Mayo as
or
Cynthia.
Violet. Yeah.
That would have been hilarious. Mm-hmm. But and because Jayma, no, I've seen her in many things. I think. Oh, maybe the first time I ever took notice of her, I think, was Ugly Betty, when she played America Ferrara's love interest's ex-girlfriend, and we were supposed to hate her, and then saw her in Glee. I've seen her in everything now. She was in the Bill and Ted sequel, the requel, that got released, that I loved, and she played one of the princesses. Like she's another one who just works kind of. It would seem, I'm sure it's not the reality, but it seems like she can work whenever she feels like. There's always a role for Jayma Mays somewhere. But I
mean, most actors, they don't want to be actors. It's just a job that they.
Well, I don't know about that. That's a whole other conversation. But God. But okay, so but with Wes, because one thing I wanted to touch on, you were just discussing like what motivates him and everything like that. I remember I showed it before on my little extra bonus disc for the Nightmare box set that I have. There is a special feature on it that it's a sea of like blurbs from Wes Craven, but this one is especially long, might be about 10 minutes long, and it's called Filmmaker. You click on the link Filmmaker and you just see him discuss his entire like what led to basically him kind of like, I guess, falling into filmmaking. And one of the things that I loved about it was the amount of failure on the road there. Like he had a really cushy job, and I guess pending tenure at a college, at a university, teaching English. And it suddenly occurred to him, I want to make movies. So he took his family and moved them, I don't remember where, somewhere where it seemed like there might be a job, like directing something. And it didn't pan out. And then the job was no longer there at the university, so he had done this terrible thing and uprooted his entire family and crossed a country, and now had to kind of like basically go back with his tail between his legs and get a job teaching English in a high school, which is, a step down from tenure and big time university professor and everything like that. And he just told himself, I'll never forget this, he told himself at the time, like, that must have been some fugue state I was in. What was I thinking? Me, a filmmaker? And I think that's around the time he met up with Sean Cunningham, because I think they had kids that were roughly the same age and possibly went to school with each other. And Sean made him the business option of just kind of like, you want to come over and do this and we'll be partners. And he's like, and then was inspired to do Last House on the Left, but it was in and of itself an adaptation of another movie that I believe is in a Criterion edition of its own called Virgin Spring, I think is what it's called. So that's Last House on the Left is a remake. But
Who would have thought?
And then that just got the ball rolling, because all of a sudden people were trying to break into projection booth and destroy it and think like, Wes Craven is sick, and now people know his name.
Good for him.
And then the movies followed. But with this, one of the things that I loved about with this one is it also gave me, he isn't just a horror director, he is a director. He's like a director's director, in that like you can put him in any genre. I remember seeing Music of the Heart and the work he did with that. It's this, heartwarming story about a teacher who's like punching upward, trying to, get violins for her children so she can, for her, in her classroom, and she's, a divorce, and Meryl Streep is playing it. Angela Bassett is the principal. Gloria Estefan is one of the teachers, and he's just got this star-studded cast, and here he is directing this Wes Craven's Music of the Heart,
It's funny because, I don't know if it's just that his name is associated with horror so much, but like the name Craven just sounds so horror-esque in and of itself that it's just so like, just imagine like Wes Craven like directs random
Bridget Jones' Diary.
Movie. I was just thinking like kids movies or
kids movies.
Like that. Yeah, they just see Craven.
Wes Craven's Cinderella. Oh my God, I wish he directed a Cinderella. No matter what genre, I would see it.
I think it's just because like when you look at like this like Scream box, because I think like because they have Scream and obviously like, the M is like sharp, and then I think they did that with all like the other like Craven, like the V. It's just like almost like a knife, and you just look at his name, music of the heart, of just like Wes Craven, and like slicing into the violin or something like that.
It's right up there with Bram Stoker in terms of like, you're like, okay, we're in for a horror ride, obviously.
I did want to
like
Sorry, I wanted to circle around because you were gonna say something earlier, and I don't know if you got a chance to say it, but you were saying the hook for the movie.
Okay. So the hook for me, I kind of, but there's, like I said, there's so much to unpack with this movie. But the hook for me at the end of the day is learning about these people and watching them learn about each other. The most captivating thing, aside from everything that's kind of like mapped out in that very Hitchcockian way, is just the give and take, the ball being tossed back and forth between Rachel McAdams as she's doing her work and Cillian Murphy while he's doing his. And the fact that for a lot of that, I'm not thinking about where the camera is positioned or anything like that. Like I said, I didn't even take notes. I was on the ride. So the fact that like I get to watch this progression of thought for her and her estimation of him as we slowly, because I didn't remember exactly, I knew he was bad, but I didn't remember exactly why. And so I'm waiting to find out. And then once it starts to become clear, I really started to feel it when he wouldn't tell her what he did for a living, but he did. But she just kind of like laughed it off and said, okay, fine, you don't have to tell me. And I'm like, shit, he just did. Like, he just told you, like, there's executioner or whatever. I forget exactly the lines that he said, but he maps it out in a way that sounds like, oh, it could never be that. And that's exactly like what he's doing. He's an orchestrator. He's a person who gets the terrorist from A to B, and he's making money on that. And that's another thing, is that he doesn't feel, even though I would never defend him or any of the actions that he takes in this movie, but it doesn't ever feel like he's just this kind of gruesome, monstrous man. He feels like a man who has his own story, has probably shifted things in his own being to get where he is now, so he doesn't have to feel or think about any of the things that he's done, any of the horrible, occurrences that he's helped orchestrate or construct. And so, because she's even imploring with him, and even, when she finally shares with him the story, and she has her own reason for doing it, but the story of the scar on her chest.
Right.
And he's listening. There's this kind of like reaction take that we get on him, this shot of him kind of tilting his head like, oh my God, you're sharing something real with me. And he hears it. He's not like a monstrous person who's sitting there going, huh, or anything like that. Yeah. He knows the gravity of what she's sharing with him, and he receives it like it's this terrible story. It doesn't soften his resolve in any way as to like what needs to be done, but they're two people.
He has a response to it. I forget what his response is, because he just sort of like assumes what that met, because she's just like, you know how that like changed my life or whatever, and I forget the exact line, because I didn't watch this in preparation, because I watched it like 3 times a month ago when I bought it, and I've just been super busy.
Okay.
So I remember the movie, but I forget what he said, but she's just like, no, that I was never going to let that happen to me again. And then that's when we get the infamous like pen jab tracheotomy. What do you call that?
Tracheotomy,
yeah.
Yeah, kind
Sorry,
of
I don't watch enough
tracheotomy.
Doctor shows, but
or Grey's Anatomy, yeah.
Do you remember what he said to her?
He said something. Basically, he did appease her. Like he said something like, "Well, listen." I don't remember if it was right at that moment or right before, but basically, he knew where she was going with it, and maybe it was broken up in her story before she says that it was never going to happen again. But he says, "Listen, as soon as this is done, and I get we touch on the ground, and I can give the green light, and you can go." He basically maps out what it's going to be like for her once they touch down, and everything's going to be fine, and she can call her father just to double check, as if that's going to make any difference. And it, but really to put her at ease without softening, without seeming like she's getting to him, kind of thing.
Here's a question: do you believe him?
Yeah. I think he was a businessman.
Because,
what do you think?
Yeah, no, I do think so as well. Because, just like you were saying, that there's more complexity to this character than him just being like a mustache twirling villain. Because I think that he actually was interested in her. Like he was attracted to her. If the situation was different, he probably would have pursued her in a way. So this is really like the closest he can get to her intimately, is just like in this sort of like threatening situation of like sitting next to her on the plane.
And studying her for 8 weeks prior.
Yes, because we find out that he's been stalking her, and he's almost like he's obsessed with her in a way that is just like, there's just one thing I can't figure out. Like what, like, you're this beautiful woman, you're successful, you should have the whole world in the palm of your hand, et cetera, but here you are, you spend every night alone, watching old movies and like eating ice cream or whatever, and not going out to or I think if she did go out to bars, she would go out alone, or I forget the exact thing, but he was just like, he found that so interesting and captivating that just like he needed to find out more about her, because he wanted to be that, like, take up that role in her life. And it's almost unfortunate for them that, he did turn out to be, this terrorist, whatever you would classify his thing as, because I mean, like, she clearly, there was an interest there, that if this was a romantic comedy, if there was another movie there,
oh my God,
that they could have had that happy ending. So it's just.
It would have ended with like him being in the house with her and everything like that, and maybe he's got the kill shot, and then all of a sudden he can't, so he just kind of just drops it and just lets the cops take him away.
I don't mean that. I don't mean that. But that would have been terrible.
That would have been hilarious.
But just it would have been in terrible. Terms, because it's like, it's any way you want to classify what is going on between them, it's a relationship. To a certain extent, it's a relationship of abuse, and there's still a trajectory for where they go from point A to B, that you can kind of see everything. So it's just happening very quickly, because the movie's very quickly, and it's all taking place in more or less real time, like not exactly, but there's something that like Wes Craven does, because you were talking about like you weren't keeping track of like, where the camera is on that. But something I notice, which I think is probably one of the most successful examples of close-up shots and then like farther away shots, is probably Silence of the Lambs, just specifically the scene where Clarice meets Hannibal Lecter for the first time, Anthony Hopkins Hannibal Lecter, not Brian Cox Hannibal Lecter, and and it's just sort of it all has to do with like the male gaziness of the movie, and just like how Jonathan Demme, it's Demme, right? Demme. The director of Silence of the Lambs, just represents sort of like how much Hannibal is in Clarice's head and vice versa, and just like with the distance of the cameras and where their people are looking. And Wes Craven like really does that here with just the close-ups on people's eyes, because there's these shots where it just might be like, you know, her face and upper body, but then there will be like certain times where it's just like on her eyes or on his eyes, and just like a very like intimate, very up close. And there's one in particular, and I think it's right before the scene where she tells the story, because he's saying something, he's going on about his thing, and she's kind of looking down, and he says something that like triggers her, and her eyes just kind of like dart up, like she's looking away from him, they just go somewhere. And it's just like, to really, I mean, I don't want to credit all that to Wes Craven, because obviously that's Rachel McAdams as well, but it's just like the wheels are spinning in her head. She's got the pen. She knows what she's got to do now, and she knows that like, I'm going to tell him the story, and this is how I'm going to get out of this situation. So it's just like, it's so wonderful seeing the dynamics of this, because I feel like a lot of movies nowadays, there's not really a rhyme or reason to having a close-up shot or having a farther away shot. It's just more so to break up the style of something. Like I say, like YouTubers, like for me in particular, sometimes what we have to do is like continuously change like the depth of zoom just to keep like the focus on the actual video, because if you have a stagnant shot for too long, it's almost like, you know, that's when you start to lose your target audience, because people are just like, okay, I could be doing something else. Like there's not enough like visually happening here. And I think that's
absolutely
what a lot of filmmakers do, just to kind of like create more action in the frame when there's not any action. And if it's being done for no reason, then it's kind of pointless. But, you know, when you have directors like Wes Craven or Jonathan Demme, where they have like a very precise idea behind every camera angle that they use in the movie, like that's where it starts to really get into the you know what I mean. I'm not going to try to think of any more clever words.
No, I understood completely. Also, because I mean, while you're talking about like the just like the cinematic atmosphere that they're capturing, you're making me think about like the DP and the relationship that he and Wes Craven must have. I'm looking at the DP. His name is Robert Yeoman. And predominantly, I mean, he's done a lot. I mean, like 59 features as cinematographer or director of photography. And same thing. And
did so Peter many of Deming them, not do? Because his usual DP.
It's Robert Yeoman.
In this one,
as the DP on this one. But what's interesting is, predominantly he's worked on comedies. He's done a lot of Melissa McCarthy movies like Spy and The Heat, and he did Bridesmaids. But he's also he was the director of photography with Wes Anderson on Moonrise Kingdom and a lot of things. Darjeeling Limited. I'm wondering if he's done Royal Tenenbaums. Okay, so he's Wes Anderson's go-to guy also. Look, he was the DP for Dogma and Rushmore. Okay, anyway, so, but because it's interesting that, like, again, like to defy genre, I guess, or allow yourself to defy being defined by a genre-specific artist. Because everything that you're talking about, like, I absolutely felt like this dynamic that was ultimately propelling us forward in this movie, but at the same time not leaving the actors behind, and just the fact that Yeoman and Craven were able to collaborate in a sense that allowed for that, and then Yeoman can go work on a comedy, and Wes can go try to make sense of what happened with the whole cursed thing. I don't know. It kind of warms my heart. It makes me. I think everything that I learn about Red Eye for the rest of my days will only continue to endear me to the film, because that's exactly what's happening. The only thing that kind of like I was thinking, okay, well, they're taking a little bit of liberty for this. is just the amount of conversation and the intensity of conversation they were having. I was wondering, nobody is overhearing this the entire time. I don't want them to. I don't need the movie to be different, but it did occur to me while I was watching, because it just made me think about instances where I've been overheard, because I'm a very loud person. I don't know if you know that about me, but I have an audible voice that carries, and I've told punchlines to like the people I'm traveling with, and I get laughter 2 rows ahead because somebody is, eavesdropping or just can't help but hear what the fuck I'm saying. So every now and then I was just kind of like, there's a lot of conversation.
There's definitely instances where, I feel like that criticism can be brought up. I wouldn't necessarily say this is one of them, because you'd have to imagine that they're having, even though we can hear them audibly, like this is a conversation that they'd be having very low and quiet that, people on the plane wouldn't. Where I do take umbrage with things like that is movies like Sinister, which we covered episode 6, if you want to go all the way back, of just like Ethan Hawke rummaging around the house in the middle of the night and just like dropping shit and breaking it and not waking up his wife or kids at any point. I know that we're going to talk about this next week as well, so I won't really get too much into it. But I don't see that as a criticism for this one, because I think that it's part of the structure of the story. People are not going to be hearing them. So,
like I said, I wouldn't change it, but it was one thing that occurred to me. I was just kind of like, oh, wouldn't anybody hear? Okay. But the only other thing that I was just kind of like, again, I wouldn't change it. I think I get what everyone concerned was going for. And I love the plethora of reactions we get from Rachel McAdams as she goes to, trying to find a way out, to just trying to get herself emotionally calm, to, okay, the bathroom scene. I love the way she kind of like finagles her way out of his gaze and into the restroom. And there was one thing I was thinking where she went in there and she had a breakdown, and who could blame her for the amount of things that she's like absorbed up until that point in the movie. But all I could think was, restrooms on airplanes are cesspools, and she full on, there is nothing, I don't care how hysterical I am, you will never find me sink to the floor of an airplane restroom. Oh god. I just thought, like, you're gonna catch things you're gonna get boils on your legs, you're gonna get like some kind of flesh-eating bacteria on your hands. Yeah, god,
I curse you with boils on your legs.
Yes, right.
Ooh, airplane restroom. Nasty.
All I could think was like, her skirt's probably wet now because there's never a dry airplane restroom. And also, then when she vomited and her hair just kind of fell, I'm like, okay, so we're not even trying to, like, I had long hair, and I remember anytime, and I was drinking back in those days, so I remember anytime I would vomit, I would sweep it up. But I'm a Virgo. Maybe.
I think this entire conversation is very, very Virgo. No, she's definitely I don't know what she would be. But he and I hate to say this, but he's absolutely a Scorpio, 100%.
Because it's all about just getting the job done. Like it's clear and simple. Like,
well, there's like there's just a certain possessiveness that he has, and again, first, just preface, I'm a Scorpio, it's just so no one thinks that I'm just slandering a random zodiac sign, but no, just like the way that he, like, when she goes to the bathroom and he gets up in the aisle and he's standing there just sort of like watching her, just like, I'm not even gonna take my eyes off of you, and just like that's the need to know of, like, I've followed you for 6 weeks, not that Scorpios do that, but he's just like, I need to know, like, what is this about you? Like, I'm just like so obsessively interested in finding this out, because we will, like, if there's something, a piece of information, not necessarily about a person, but just like anything, we will not rest until we have the answers. So it's very very Scorpio energy from him.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll have to think about her. We'll get back to Lisa Reiser's sign.
Yes.
But
but in the bathroom.
Yeah. Well, I'd be lying if I didn't think like, ew, that floor is gross or whatever. But, I just think like that in that moment, like I just see like the way I see her is like, this is a Wes Craven final girl. And
yeah,
I'm just thinking, because we already talked about Ellie and Kirst and I forget if we've covered any other Wes Craven final girls. But I think that I know you are Nancy number one all the way. Yeah.
Yes.
And I would mine would be Sydney. I would say Sydney, then Nancy, but I would say that Lisa is top three. Like she would be next of just like, these strong women in Wes Craven movies, because this is a very feminist movie in the way that just how she fights back, because in that scenario, in any other thriller or horror movie, that your character would go into the bathroom and they'd have a full-on mental breakdown and they wouldn't know what to do. But she has the breakdown, understandably so, like she's allowed to do that, but then she just gets right back up and she thinks of what her next move is. Like there's never a moment in the film where she's helpless and hopeless. She always has her next move planned out several steps ahead. Right. So I think like that's what makes her just a more compelling character, because she could be a strong woman and still be forced into this predicament and be stuck in it throughout the movie, but that doesn't make her weak in any way, and it doesn't make her what's the term they use in Scream 5, a Mary Sue who can just do anything. Yes. I still never understood that terminology, but she's just constantly thinking on her toes, like when the power goes out or like the phone signal, and she's pretending, and he's just he's always one step behind her. He'll like catch on to it, so that's why it just causes her to be more creative in the way that she strategizes things.
It was after midnight. I was in my room, like laying under the covers watching this movie, and the headbutt made me, I just called out, and I was like, oh shit, did I wake mom? But, and then later, oh my God, I can't remember now exactly when it was. It was one of the points where she was fighting back towards the end, like toward the climax, where it was when she headbutted him back, and I clapped over my head, which is hard to do when you're laying down, but there was nothing else that I could do. I just kind of like my team just won or scored a point or something, I was just kind of like, and I
sports.
was oh my God, sports, run. I mean, I'm probably feeling the same way when, if a football fan is watching, their boy with the ball or their girl with the ball run toward the goal and everything, and they're just like, I'm watching her run through those gates, and I'm like, run, girl,
I definitely feel it when she gets on the tram and the doors close before he can get there. I was almost like, part of me was like hoping that she would like flip him off as like
me too, totally. I thought that,
but I just maybe if this was like Wes Craven's Curse, it would be like the werewolf flipping it off. But I guess we're trying to remain serious in the moment here, because not that this movie fully takes itself seriously, because I think like the stuff with the little girl like pushing the bag in the way like that might have been like a little goofy, but I think it still worked for what it was, and it was a payoff too, because it was like we've set up this little girl that, again, it's not for nothing. It's not like we meet her at the beginning and they're like, oh, she's flying alone, and oh, we'll make sure to look after you, and yada yada yada. She's actually like, she's probably the most perceptive person on that airplane. I mean, not in like she might be. She is. Who's noticing? Like that's the thing. Just to counter your criticism, or your criticism, I say in quotation fingers, of people like not overhearing them, because I think that in a lot of cases, whether people can hear someone in public or not, most of the time nobody cares about what's going on with strangers. I mean, there's definitely people who are, into eavesdropping and just like, oh, that's so interesting, and yada, yada, yada. But most of the time, people out in public, they're not even thinking about other people. They're not concerned with them. So that's why I think like on an airplane, you know, I'm content with seeing like everyone is kind of like in their own headspace, whereas like you have this character like this little girl, and she's so intrigued by Lisa and Jackson that she's just like sees them and just like, this doesn't seem right. Like, you know, I might not be old enough to really understand this, but I know that
something's off.
Yeah, that she would have the presence of mind to kick the bag out and trip him at the end.
Because he's a bad man. I don't know why, but I just get a sense he's a bad man. He needs to be stopped. But I want the girl to get away.
Yeah, but that's that's just like Wes Craven doing the like paying off little things, like the woman with the scarf, and then how the scarf ends up being the thing that he puts around his neck to cover the tracheotomy. Yeah.
And when he was, I do have to say, like that, I was kind of chuckling a little inside just when he's talking to her in the house. I think that's the first time we hear him like saying things after he's had the inadvertent tracheotomy. He's just sitting there, and I'm just kind of going, this must have been a fun day on set. But immediately I'm thrust right back into the movie. That's the thing. I might trail off like as far as like, ew, that's a dirty bathroom, or he sounds funny, but I'll always come back because the movie will bring me back. There's always something there. I did feel also like, when the doors shut and he's left at the airport and she's, you know, starting to kind of like go away. I did want her to flip him off, but I also understood we can't celebrate too early because it's one hurdle. We have so many more. And the fact that she's then driving, I don't remember how she got the car. Do you remember? Because she didn't have her purse with her, so she didn't have car keys, I don't think. Or is it her car? I don't know.
I'd have to watch it again. I don't
remember. Because all of a sudden she was in the car. And
there's a criticism we can point out. Okay. You know, because you know how I feel about continuity.
Right. All of a sudden she's in a car. Maybe she had her car keys in her pocket. I don't know. It seems like something. If every woman I've known who carries a purse keeps her car keys in her purse, so you tell me. Yeah. But anyway, whatever. I don't care. She's on the road. She's taking care of business. She's got her phone. That's another thing that dated the movie for me. The phones. I was just kind of like, wow, they used to look like that.
The flip phone. Was it a razor or was it a flip?
It was even, some of them were just like little Nokias, like little shoes, you know, just like little, they were little one-piece things, but they were smaller than this. You know, they weren't like little screen bricks. They were, you know, they had the buttons at the bottom.
I remember like one of the first phones I had, or like the first ones that I like really felt proud of. Like I had a sense of pride about, like, oh, I have a nice phone. It was one of the Sony Ericssons. And I just remember like how, like, it was like a clamshell sort of thing. I just remember like how neat it was. It was like silver and blue or something. And then it's just like, oh, how dated that must feel now. Like I felt like James Bond with like all these like little gadgets. I had a mini disc player. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
I could never for the fucking life of me figure out how to get music on it, because it was like this very difficult process of like hooking it up to your computer, and then there was like the software, and every time I tried it would fail. That it would take so many different tries to just get the music on there. But I just felt like, oh, this is so cool. It's like it's not an MP3, but it's not a Discman either. It's just like this square little thing that, you know, has a little whatever the fuck went into it. It was an interesting time in the early 2000s. What did you just think?
I just love you calling it a Discman. Everybody I've ever heard call it a Discman.
A Discman.
You know, like it's in that that crass US kind of way. Like, man, I got my Discman.
Yeah, it's my disc, man.
Discman.
Discman.
Like a bushman.
Well, it's one word, so I just think like Discman. Or like,
all right, cool.
Batman. Batman and Robin.
Batman, Spider-Man. But
well, Spider-Man is hyphenated, so I feel like Spider-Man.
Okay, Superman.
Slenderman. Bring it back
Slenderman.
to
Candyman. Say it 5 times.
Candyman.
Oh my, do you think it works? Do you think if you look in a mirror and say Candyman 5 times?
Or if like there's somehow, it's like Wheel of Fortune where it's just like, sorry, you didn't say it right. Like
or some guy
Pat
just shows
Sajak
up.
appears out and he's just like, sorry. Yeah. the correct
Or
term
some
we
guy
were
shows
looking
up,
for
but
was
it's the Candyman. It's not Candy. Yeah, exactly. Or then some other guy, the Candyman, shows up, and it's just some guy who's just kind of like, "Hello, I'm the Candyman. The Candyman can." Anyway, they got derailed really quickly.
Yes.
Okay.
Back to Red Eye.
Back to Red Eye. I was making a point, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, so she's on the phone. That dated it.
Yes.
Okay. And then she gets back to. Oh, well, first she does the hotel thing and everything like that. Okay, that felt really actiony to me. Just everything from the Coast Guard going onto that ship. And I thought they were being so super thorough just because here they are like looking through binoculars from the window of the place where Keith and his family are staying. And they see, this little fishing... It's not a yacht, but it's not a boat. I mean, what is it? I guess it's a boat, but it's an expensive looking boat, bigger boat. Yeah. And they're just sitting there. They're like, it's just like, well, there's one people that are just fishing. It's just like, I don't remember what the terminology was, but he says something like look into it or something like put it in, lock it in or something like that. Yeah. And then the next thing we know, we see all of these like officials. Like I didn't get to see, I guess it was the Coast Guard, but they went over to the boat, to the boatman, and they and here they're like searching all over and everything like that, and it never occurred to them to look at the end of their fucking fishing line. It didn't occur to me either, but to look at the end of their fucking fishing lines to see if they might have been holding some kind of weaponry, which is exactly what they were doing. Yeah. And I thought, God, that's smart. And it almost made me want to like conduct some kind of like horrible, like high profile like attack on someone.
I wonder if like movies this like make terrorists smarter.
I don't.
But then again, like how
like
do you have like a fishing line connected to this big crate, and how like that's a lot.
That's why there's two.
That's a lot of weight.
That's why there's two.
Yeah.
But and then so the whole blast and everything. That's when the movie felt more action adjacent than ever.
Yeah.
Just because he wasn't the president, but he may as well have been. Like, let's get the president and his family out of the building. Hop, 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 hop. And everybody's like running away. And then we see a missile. And the last guy literally sees the missile coming and still runs out of the room and everything. And I'm just going, and then you see the building and the top of it's all like charred and broken and shit. And I'm like, wow. And then those fuckers who got the upgrade earlier in the movie still want to complain about some shit because they were so put upon when the building got a chunk of it like blown off. Who are those fucking people? Oh, God, I'm so glad they're the ones who basically get the middle finger that we've been waiting for Lisa to give someone. And I actually prefer that they got the verbal middle finger to Jack.
She's like, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna go fill out a complaint card, and shove it up your ass.
You want me to fill out a comment card?
I don't know why you just sounded like Sandy the waitress when you said that. you can't go back up
fill out a comment
card. Friday the 13th, part 1, yeah.
Lisa always takes care of me. And I know enough to come in from the rain. But, oh, God.
It's raining plaster on my head.
Love her forever, right? Love her forever. Anyway, she should have been one of the hotel guests. Go on, I'm sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, and this is my favorite part. Just like going through IMDb trivia and seeing all of the what could have been, because I never know if any of these are right. I think
or true, yeah.
Yeah, because I think like when we were doing the old podcast and we did Hannibal, it was just like all the actresses who were in contention to be the new Clarice to replace Jodie Foster, and I think I saw one of them, wasn't it like Denise Richards, and we were just like, stop.
No.
Not that I mean I love Denise Richards, but I just thought it was bullshit at that point. But no, I'm just like some of the names that were thrown out here, because I guess for a while, well, when it was written, it was initially, according to this, intended to be played by Sean Penn and his then wife, Robin Wright.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that the idea was that these were going to be older characters, and then as the process got whittled down, they're just like, no, it's going to be younger. Because I'm just looking here. I mean, not that Lisa Kudrow was that old at the time, but she was considered, because she's older than Rachel McAdams. But yeah,
Yes,
she
she is.
Lisa Kudrow was a name on there. Elizabeth Mitchell, Dee Wallace was. Could you imagine Dee Wallace in this role?
God. Oh,
I would watch the shit out of that still, but
I wouldn't know what I mean, she's so good in Dire Consequences and Stuck in a Confined Space. I'm just thinking Cujo. I'm just thinking like playing that level of. Oh my God! It would have been a completely different movie, but I would have watched. Yeah.
Listen to this: Kate Blanchett, Molly Shannon, Nicole Kidman.
Molly Shannon.
Molly Shannon.
Wait, as the Rachel McAdams part?
Yeah.
No.
That's what it says.
She would have been a great Cynthia. I think she would have been a great. No. There's no way. She's too crazy. I would have preferred.
Yeah.
Molly Shannon should have played Jack. She would have been great.
Well, I'm just thinking of like that episode of Seinfeld where she's Elaine's coworker who doesn't swing her arms and then has that shit conniption in her office.
God, no, because Molly Shannon can do some great work. I mean, Hannibal, not the movie, but the series.
The
oh my
TV
God,
series,
she was terrifying in her guest spot on that show. She should have been like a big bad on Hannibal, for like a whole season.
I have to go back and watch, because every time I start season 3, I always I don't know what it is. Like, it's good, but I can't get through the first couple of episodes, and I've never been able to finish it. And I've attempted twice now to do it, and I feel like at this point I just need to just go and start at the beginning of the series. But I feel like I've watched all of those episodes so many times that I just don't want to watch them anymore. And we were talking about Hannibal last week, because remember I said that Tiffany's house in Chucky season 2 was I had seen Hannibal so many times that I recognized that's the same house that Gillian Anderson lives at, where she takes patients, or just the one patient of Hannibal. So yeah, I remember Molly Shannon though, because she was like a child abductor. Or an abductress of children,
and like brainwashed.
I like that title, abductress of children.
Abductress. That's so Harry Potter. Who are you? I'm an abductress of children. And you can't go out there in that rain.
I mean, if you're like Molly Shannon in that role, that's pushing it a bit. I mean, not to say that I don't think she could play serious, but it's just like, at that time she was so well known for her turn on Saturday Night Live and comedies. Like, I mean, like, you may as well just say, like, get Melissa McCarthy in there as Lisa.
Yeah, right. Like, that's the thing is, it's about type, and that's why I'm like, Molly Shannon would be a better Jack, because I love her in Extreme.
Yeah.
I
think Molly Shannon can be very intense. Like, she has that, she would have that reptilian Murphy intensity.
I could see myself feeling like the most comfortable I've ever felt with a person with Molly Shannon, and also like the most uncomfortable I've ever felt with a person with Molly Shannon, depending on how she felt about me and what she needed to get done.
And that would be the twist too, because it's like, here's a person who just seems like a very friendly, outgoing individual, and then all of a sudden they just turn on you. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Wasn't she on like Will and Grace too? I've never like fully committed to watching Will and Grace, but I remember her being like Grace's like neighbor, and there was like a friendship, and then all of a sudden she turned like insane.
Well, it started earlier than that. She started being kind of like a Grace replacement, because Will and Grace weren't hanging out as much, and so he found Molly Shannon, and they started hanging out more.
So it's like an All About Eve, single white female
kind of situation. Single white female. Yes, totally.
Anyway, we're like going way off track here, because we're talking about
I know Molly Shannon. Welcome to the Molly Shannon podcast,
because
y'all.
It says on IMDb trivia that Molly Shannon was going to play her. Now we're talking about
Molly
Shannon.
What was the name? I didn't even hear the name that you said after Molly Shannon. What was the last name?
Nicole Kidman.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of feels like a Nicole Kidman wheelhouse part.
Yeah.
Like, I could see her easily wanting to play that part, and she's really, really good at playing Dire Straits also. But again, like, I can see things happening to her, and her reacting to them, but
I
like
think
being otherwise a really peaceful person.
The way that this turned out, just in terms of the casting, was perfect, because I feel that if you had cast someone more mature, like Nicole Kidman or Kate Blanchett, like that, would have been a great movie. It would have been a great performance. But I feel like, I mean, I want to say that it would have been forgotten because I feel like Red Eye is more or less forgotten. But I think that what's possible is like this movie could have a resurgence now that it's released on 4K and now that like, you know, people are talking about it and we're talking about it. Not to say that we have enough clout to like, it's like spread the word.
We're gonna lead the way.
But I can see like
the Red Eye tribe.
There's so many like thrillers that came out in like the 2000s that were very decent, very very well made, that just disappeared because it's just they were a dime a dozen. And I feel like in the typical Wes Craven style, you know, he I should say this is more of like the Weinstein casting ability, because they knew how to cast people, and they cast, they had that eye for young talent. So that's why that era of like, you know, like Scream, The Faculty, I Know What You Did Last Summer, not that they had anything to do with I Know What You Did Last Summer, but like all those things were just like, you know, we're gonna cast these young hip up and comers like Cillian Murphy and Rachel McAdams, who'd already just come off of Mean Girls and I guess The Notebook, you know, whether that was before or after that, you know, it really kind of cements this movie as being part of that subgenre
regime
of of just like the movies that are based around the cast and not necessarily around the premise, because I feel like if this was a Nicole Kidman movie, it would mostly be remembered as the movie and not really for her, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, you were talking to the wrong person, because Nicole Kidman is one of my legends, you know, like I don't think I've ever seen her be bad in anything.
No, I would no. She would not be bad in it, but it would just feel it would just
but I'd
disappear.
remember.
maybe it's the opposite actually. Maybe what I'm saying is that she would actually eclipse the movie. That's what I meant to say.
It would probably be like a Nicole Kidman movie to most mainstream audiences instead of a Wes Craven movie.
Yeah, that's what I should have said, and which is the complete opposite of what I said. But and it would have you're absolutely right, and it wouldn't have been like a top 10 Nicole Kidman movie. I mean, I would say I'd have to go through like Wes Craven's filmography, but I think that this definitely deserves to be in the higher echelon of the works that he did. Whereas like if you're like comparing this, if it was Nicole Kidman to like all of her other works, then it would have been like, oh yeah, and then like, you know, 20 movies down we have Red Eye, which is a good movie, but I mean like it's just Red Eye, you know, whereas I feel like with Wes Craven it's just like it's Red Eye.
And also, I mean, again, when you get to the point where my criticisms are, ew, yucky bathroom, why are you on your knees? And then, you know, and what was my other criticism? Like, can't people hear what they're saying? Like, I mean, again, like I'm buying my suspension of disbelief as an audience member is in full effect because it's too interesting what's going on. It doesn't pull me out in a way that is a deal breaker, and everything else. I mean, those are nitpicks. Like, we're splitting hairs with, you know, with like the things that like, you know, might occur to us in terms of like what goes in the minus column. But as far as
minutia of it all,
it was so great to just kind of embrace this film for the first time, seeing it for the second time. That I'll always be that's what keeps me going back to movies, wondering, oh yeah, I saw that, I wonder how I'd feel about it now, because sometimes this can happen, you know. And
one movie that I would, because I heard someone mention it recently, is Don't Say a Word. Do you remember that one?
No.
It was it's Michael Douglas and
Brittany remember. I know
Brittany Murphy.
Yeah.
And she's like a patient of his.
Right.
And she has like the code to some sort of, like, it's a thriller. She's autistic or something. But she knows the code. You know, it's like the same kind of like Mercury Rising type things with like Miko Hughes, and just like the idiot savant who, you know, just like appears to be mental, but they actually hold the key to something. I don't know. I saw it once in the theater, and I don't remember anything more about it. But yeah, there's all these movies that just came out around that time of just like the 2000s, like specifically the early 2000s, which have just kind of been lost. They're probably not even on Blu-ray, and if they are, they're just like shitty little ports from the DVD.
And then there are also those that are like remembered because whatever gimmick they had was original enough that like it kind of like found its way into the mainstream vernacular. Like what I'm thinking about, case in point, is Panic Room. It's a good movie. You can sit through it and you can enjoy yourself. You go on the ride. But I feel like the most references I've heard to Panic Room in the past, let's say, I forget what year it was released, but let's say at least decade and a half, have been in reference to the notion of a panic room as opposed to, you know, the legendary status of the movie and, you know, its hold, its grip on, like, it didn't take the way Fatal Attraction did, you know, in its day. You know, it's just kind of like, ooh, a panic room, and then people make a joke about, like, you know, let's go to our panic room. You know?
I mean, it's definitely been more than 20 years, because it was like, at least if not the year 2000 or 2001, you know, maybe, I don't think it was like 1999. But yeah, I just think like maybe it was sort of like that movie popularized
2002
people 2002 popularized people building panic rooms in their homes.
Yes,
and I also remember it for being one of Kristen Stewart's first roles, like
that was my first exposure to her.
Pre Twilight and all that.
And I liked her a lot in that movie. I thought, like, what a good little girl performer you are. Like, I want to see you in something else. And then I think the next thing I knew about was Twilight, and we won't talk about that.
I have Panic Room. I need to revisit that. There's so many. I'm gonna like make a list at some point, and maybe we'll do them on the podcast. Like, we'll slowly go through just like some of the forgotten gems, or maybe they deserve to be forgotten, of the early 2000s.
A little column A, a little column B. Variety is the spice of life, and I'm down for it. Totally.
Yeah. If people are interested in seeing this, like, comment on the YouTube right now. Let us know, or on Instagram. But do you want to just kind of like talk about the, like, I guess like the final confrontation, because we haven't really talked too much about that scene, and then we can kind of mosey on. Because we've mostly been talking about the airplane.
Yeah. The precedent is set with that bathroom scene for me on the plane, when everything that follows my yuck is it sounds like I'm going to follow it up with my yum, but it's not my yum. It's actually quite the opposite. But I go from yuck to just wincing and very, very uncomfortable with the brutality of it, and the brutality that he is capable of and comfortable with exacting on her when it's not personal, when it is just business, because he needs to, you know, I guess, send her a message himself. But then in the end, I love that comment that she says to him, where it's just like, so now it's personal, you know, and it's like, damn right it's personal. He's got a hole in his throat because you put it there, and rah, rah, rah for you. Yeah. But I think the fact that it is now, I mean, okay, even before the personal thing, just the fact that she drives a fucking truck into her own home or her dad's home, her old home, her home that she grew up in. Yeah, her childhood home with the old bedroom. But she just drives through the threshold, and I'm sitting there. Again, I'm there for it. I'm just kind of like, yes, because you got a weapon. I remember thinking in that I'm in this movie kind of mode, going like, okay, he's got a weapon, you got a weapon, you got your fucking car, now just pedal to the metal. You know, I'm like cheering her on like I'm her coach or something, like her life coach. And the fact that she takes him out and gets to go, you know, and there's all of the strategy, but the personal strategy, the survival strategy, the instincts, and the again like kind of like Scream adjacent, because we've seen Wes do something like this. I went to now just thinking about Gale in the recording studio in Scream 2, and just, you know, the balance, like the trying to anticipate the moves of the person who's pursuing you, so you don't get found out, but so you can see him first, kind of thing. And that's exactly what Rachel McAdams is doing as she moves, what Lisa's doing as she moves through that house. The only thing that I worried about was her father.
Yeah, it is a chase scene for all intents and purposes. And I love the misdirection as well. With behind the shower, because I hadn't seen it in 18 years now, I guess. That has it been 18 years? Yes, 2005. Wow. Of just sort of like, I didn't know what to expect. I don't remember where he was, so it was just like watching it again. It was so gripping, just being like, I know that he's there. I know he's gonna pop out. I just don't know when, and that's definitely what felt very Scream to me and very Hitchcock in that moment, because I think like that has primarily been my criticisms with the new Scream movies, is that I feel that when they try to build tension in this kind of way, if there is like a chase scene or something like that, they don't know when to hold it. They don't, know how to stage it correctly, and I feel like it's more so just being done aesthetically, of just like, okay, well, we've got the components that we need, like Ghostface is there, there's the collar, and go. Whereas like if this really is homage to Wes Craven, like really like take a look at his work. Anyway, I don't mean to like put down the creators by these movies.
Radio silence.
Yeah, or the writers, or I'm just trying to point out an example of just where I feel like, that's this is the difference there, in just like crafting a tense scene like this. And
there's a vital immersive component that Wes really keys into in this movie in particular. As she's moving around that house, I am right there with her. I am Jada Pinkett in the beginning of Scream 2, going like, no, don't do that, no, I
please don't be a Maureen Evans if you ever go to the theater.
I could do it. I was in my own bedroom, but I wasn't stealing from anyone else's. But no, it was I thought it absolutely worked. And I again, that it was now personal, not only because of what happened to him, but because of what happened to her, and because he knows that when he physically manipulates her and uses physical force on her, what that means to her, and the fact that he goes even harder this time with that knowledge, because he's pissed, but also because he knows it's a perceived weak spot for her. And there's one point where he's got her basically pinned, and she just kind of goes into a slap fest on him, where she is just fighting like with everything she has, and it's not enough yet. I forget what it is that breaks her out of that particular hold, but it was palpable. And as someone, I do have to say, I wept. I was already kind of like emotional when she shot him, and he, it deterred him. It didn't take him out. But, it was like, oh, thank God. But then he was going to keep coming. And when her father finally shot him and took him out, that's when I couldn't control it, because it's so personal. But let's just put it this way. I have a number of friends who are victims of sexual violence. And to see her father be able to protect her in that moment just keyed in with something for me, where I was like, that's what I think, if someone you love, because we don't know where her father's coming from, but we don't know what he knows and what he doesn't know about her past, but because I know it, that's what I would like to do to someone who's bringing harm to someone I love, take them the fuck down. So, and I just couldn't help it. I just started weeping, because I'm like, success, justice, it felt so great. It was so gratifying.
This is a PG-13 movie. And
crazy.
Not that I ever felt that it needed to be rated R, or have more to it. Because I guess like the censors were at one point, I think it was with the pen and the throat, where they were just kind of like questioning that, and Wes Craven, of course, like, smooth that over and convince them, like, leave it in. But I think maybe it was like in the final confrontation, because there was just something about me that just felt like he's not dead enough, you know? Even like after he was shot by the father, because I was like questioning like, oh, but is he actually dead, or is he just kind of, because it looked like he was still moving for a bit. I'm just like, you know, I would have liked something more conclusive, you know, like a decapitation, or not actually, but like just something more definitive, just to know like, okay, it's over. That was, if I had a criticism, but I guess like within the constraints of you know, maintaining that PG-13, they did what they could.
Okay, I mean, I understand that, but that, I mean, I was too busy crying to have any kind of reaction like that. But I understand what you mean. It wasn't your kind of I don't even know if typical is the word, but if you were seeing a horror movie, and maybe that's another thing, the thing that like kind of disappointed me back in 2005 when I was sitting in the theater, was the fact that it didn't seem like a horror, and it felt more kind of like you know, it's over. Yeah. It's just ended. Yeah. And then we got that lovely little epilogue, and I have no complaints.
Yeah. If any, really, it just made me want more. Like I want to see them go to the bar, and I want to see them just like,
yes, just
talk about like, so how was your day, as we drink anything but a sea breeze. And like, even if that was like over the post credits, like, or not the post credits, but just like over the credits. I'm just
over
like,
the credits, yes,
like, or just like I mean, this might have gotten like too silly, but just like have all like the characters from the airplane like be there, like almost like the end of like Happy Death Day, when they were like talking about like, oh yeah, this crazy bitch in our sorority or whatever. I mean, it might have been like too tonally off, but it would have been fun to just see like all those people, like the old lady come back and just be like, she gave me this book or whatever, and then the one kid is like, I still don't know where my pen went. Or I guess he would, because Kyle Gallner's like, oh, there's your pen in his neck.
Right.
Oh, and there's another, Kyle did end up working with Wes Craven. I mean,
yeah,
you know, even though it was
not Scriforum.
well, Red Eye, but just other than,
Red
because he
Eye,
was in Scream 5, he was wasted in that movie. So. I feel that his participation in Red Eye was more satisfying than what we got in Scream.
And I love that he was, and he wasn't even Kid with Headphones. He was brother of Kid with Headphones. That's the kicker.
Yeah, not to underscore his actual death in the movie, because I did think that was quite well accomplished with like the jab to the neck and the way that it was shot. But just as a character himself in that movie, it's just like, you know, don't like. At least we got Smile
elimination.
Yeah, because he was in Smile last year. But yeah, that was a waste in Scream 5. But yeah. Anyway, anything else you want to say about Red Eye?
If you're still listening and you haven't seen it, see it. Like, if we haven't convinced you by now, I don't know. I don't know what you're waiting for. So that's to the listener. What about you, Zach?
No, I'm good. Let's fly on over to the cherry picker.
Okay, give me a second.
All right,
you weirdo.
Okay.
Des just
made a
opened
poopy.
Her litter box.
She made a poopy.
It's not like we killed people on purpose.
Okay, we need to pick a cherry on top, and there's only one as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, yeah.
Little girl on plane.
She was the most perceptive person on that plane. No, it's Lisa.
It's Lisa. Yeah, it's Lisa, awesome. Who, as far as I'm concerned, is the third place of what's all this ranking women.
Yeah, look at you.
She deserves a spot in the Wes Craven final girl gallery. But
right.
Yeah, onto the actual cherry picker, because last week we asked you who deserves to die the most in Chucky season 2. And I nominated Trevor Kane. You nominated Dr. Mixter.
Yep. And
across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, the vote was 224 for Trevor versus 430 for Dr. Mixter.
Hey.
Yeah. We're also
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. We are recording for not choosing my peg, but we are recording this a few days earlier, so normally there would be more votes. The Chucky episode hasn't actually aired at the time of this, so I don't know if there will be many comments to read, but this just worked out for our schedule, so I will read what we've got so far. So. Okay. Amethyst Frost says, I've only seen the episodes once when they aired, so I don't remember the fine details, but I vote for Mixter because I don't like her energy, and she, of all people, should have known Chucky would turn on her. P.S. So glad Tiffany got the cherry on top. She may be a murderous psychopath, but she's also a hilarious mess and a mother who never misgenders her child, which is more than many modern parents can say. What would Jennifer Tilly do? What would Jennifer Tilly do should be a real life slogan. Give her every award. Congrats on 100 cherry picker polls.
Oh, yay.
Okay.
That's hilarious. Yeah, if you're going to be a mess, be hilarious.
Yeah. Amethyst Frost is a Patreon supporter, so they actually messaged me to say that, because across all of the episodes that we've done so far, because I think we've done 64 cherry picker episodes, but we've also had our cherry picker after dark, plus the old podcast that's available on the Patreon. This has been, up until Chucky, the 100th time we've had a poll, and I forget what numbers or like what the score was, but I know that I was leading a little bit. So if anyone wants to tip the scales in Edward's favor, that can be your incentive. But anyway, thank you for doing that research, Amethyst. But the next comment is from Grant Dempsey. Oh God, Dr. Mixter, we never do find out why she'd be so on board with Charlie, do we? We only get a vague Dr. Sartain-ish fascination from her, right? I don't actually mind that about her, but without a stronger motive, her trust in Chucky does seem especially stupid. Hell, out of all the Chuckies, she spends a lot of time with the Colonel, the one who smugly surrounds his home with dead and mutilated other hymns on display. She deserves the backstab for not seeing it coming. She had decades to plan some defenses. P.S. This is the third therapist I voted for on the cherry picker this year so far, and it's the only April. It's really not a good year to be a mental health professional in horror. Who are the other therapists? Well, we had the one in M3 again. Yeah.
Yeah. Your guess is as good as mine. You're the one with the mind like a steel trap. Tell me.
I'll have to go back and look.
In Screevy.
Right. Dr. Stone. Right. That was Andre's pick. Yes, it is. No, it has not been a good year to be a therapist, for sure. But I do love the Dr. Sartain comparison, because I was actually going to make
keen observation.
Yeah, I was gonna say in support of Dr. Mixter, it's just because she has the whole thing. It's just like, I'm gonna unleash Chucky on the world, and it's just like, good. I want that. That she's doing. Right. She's creating havoc for our entertainment. But if you say then like she's like Dr. Sartain, then fuck that bitch. Anyway, this is more of a comment, but Mr. Beaver says season 2 was a train wreck.
But a hilarious one.
A hilarious train, because sometimes train wrecks can be funny, I guess.
Yeah.
Sukiyaki Akari 1203 says Mixter because I forgot Trevor existed until now. Well, I mean, he was taken care of relatively early.
Really early, yeah.
Also, is Mixter an homage? I don't know if we mentioned this on the episode, but is Mixter an homage to the Doctor from Halloween 2? Because wasn't that the Dr. Mixter? Remember when Dr. Mixter is drunk again? He's been at the country club.
That's right. I didn't make that connection.
Because there's so many. I mean, the title of the first episode is Halloween 2. And
Halloween
there's
2.
The pumpkins with the Chucky face in them, like the skull. So I guess Don Mancini really likes Halloween 2. It's probably his favorite Halloween.
Yeah, and
movie.
Halloween. Don Mancini is all about the John Carpenter and of it all. Yeah, and The Shining. He's really into The Shining.
Obviously,
so,
yeah.
Obviously.
Rashim, Trevor gets my pick for being a snotty-nosed brat and stealing drugs. Side note, Jennifer Tilly was the cherry on top for this season.
Yay.
Absolutely. Silent Saturn, Trevor, because there was no case made for him. See, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive. I also disagree with Eddie. Dr. Mixter did not deserve to be covered in an eruption of Devon Sawa.
Oh, why? No.
There's no further
I disagree.
comments on there. Yeah.
I respectfully disagree.
Sean P. I'm not gonna lie, as you never should here. I haven't seen the series. I watched all the Child's Play Chucky films in preparation for Child's Play 2 pod and have zero interest in watching the series. If you're wondering, yes, I did love one of them, and it is Bride of Chucky. My sincerest apologies to you both. I know how much you love the franchise, but it's not for me. I choose the Doctor, though, because the Doctor in horror films / TV series are usually bad people. I feel like Hannibal Lecter is the one that just, like, he paved the way for... He walked so all the other bad doctors could run. He didn't even walk. He was like wheeled out on that thing with the face mask.
Oh, on like a dolly
yeah.
that he was strapped to? Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Rob Rangel. Mixter was a terrible therapist throughout her adult life that affected the lives of many. Trevor was just a dick that was mainly mean to Lexi, who wasn't the kindest before her growth. And Thomas Baker says, Trevor, his death was so satisfying to watch, but Dr. Mixter, she deserves a grisly death for working with Chucky and for keeping Andy hostage. But my vote would have gone for Sister Ruth. She was a nutcase.
But she was, again, way too entertaining for me to vote for her. I loved watching Sister Ruth. She was an obstacle, but damn, was watchable. Watchable obstacle.
Anyway.
That's the way to go.
It appears that you also have first dibs this week, so what say you?
Well, I mean, if it's my conscience and my heart...
It doesn't always have to be, though.
No, but it's my policy. I'm the one who brought that to the table, and I wouldn't feel right voting any other way. Unless, you went first and took my choice, which you haven't. So I got to go with Jackson Ripner. Not a good vibe off of that guy. Had he survived, just a miserable life ahead for that guy. And we know this isn't his first gig, so people have been hurt before, and he's walked away, taking it all in stride and everything, and just told himself, "I'm a businessman," and all the stuff we talked about, all of it that's on the table. It's all blah. But I one thing I didn't get to say about Cillian Murphy playing him, really, or maybe I just want to double down on it, tremendously effortless performance from him. There were so many moments where somebody could have played like the threat, like early on especially, he was just having a conversation. There were moments where he's just like, this is the way it is, and I totally believed him, and I'm like, this is the way you would do it, because you don't want to arouse suspicion, because you want to keep things calm and pleasant, and you want to let them know, I'm definitely going to do this to you if you don't play ball with me. You're going to play ball? And I just, it hit the sweet spot as far as just believability. I thought it was chef's kiss.
I had to look him up to see if he actually was a Scorpio, but he's not.
Aww. Yeah. What is he?
May 25th, 76. Is that Gemini? I think
it might.
Every time it gets to like the cusp, I'm just like I
know, right?
Blank. I'm just like
the 22nd. It's around the 22nd.
Yeah, maybe. It's a Gemini, but I've decided that Lisa is a Capricorn.
Oh, okay.
She seems Capricorny too. Actually, what is the Capricorny?
Capricorn?
Rachel McAdams. Rachel McAdams is a Scorpio in real life, but yeah,
Regina George.
Regina George might very well be a Scorpio.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have to pick someone now, and
yeah,
the character's name we've referenced this person / these people, but I'm gonna pick Marianne Taylor, who is the wife character who shows up at the beginning and the end. They're basically the unsatisfied customers. And the reason I pick her instead of the husband, because I feel like she wields the power in that relationship. He just enables her. And she's basically a Karen. She's got that rich white woman entitled attitude.
Yes.
And that is very dangerous in not in 2005. I think that was just kind of normal behavior, but in 2023 cherry picker territory, it is grounds for death. So I'm saying Marianne Taylor.
Grounds for death.
Yeah,
but,
grounds for a cherry death.
I that just sounds.
If you had picked, maybe if you had just picked Bob, her husband, we just picked one or the other.
No, because then you was for sure win. Because I agree with you. The politics in that relationship are all like curried in her favor. Like he's just there to stand obstinate and support her. Just back.
And what, she got a little bit of dust on her when like people could have died. Like fuck off, bitch.
Exactly. She's gross. I mean, she was gross in the first thing. Like they were really abusing.
Is grotesque.
Yeah.
Whore. Yeah, whore.
No. I said poor, and I couldn't.
I thought I said whore.
Name.
I thought you were gonna say
no.
horrible.
They were abusing poor Cynthia, Jayma May's role.
Whore Cynthia. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Vote your conscience, vote your heart, people.
And you can vote on Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube. But I do want to welcome some new Patreon supporters. So give it up for Daddy Scarecrow, Slade, Arc of Jaunty, Lachlan Stevens, Jaden, Pedro, Shifa, Leslie Owen, Sharky, Dylan, Stacy Harper, Levi Veazey, Jasmine Hopes, and TJ Thomas Jones.
It's a lot of people. Welcome, everybody.
Because these are people who were like, yes, give us some Scream Survivor. I would think so. So, yeah, if you haven't get on board with Patreon. If you want to sign up for my Patreon, so it's under Zack Cherry, ZACK. The entry-level tier gets you early access to all of the Cherry Picker episodes. But if you want to subscribe to the Freddy Krueger tier, that's where you get our monthly bonus episode, the Cherry Picker After Dark. And the most recent two have been Scream Survivor, as alluded to earlier, where we took characters. Each season was 18 new characters from the Scream franchise and stranded them on an island. And they competed to win, which is so much fun. But next month, or I guess this month, because we're now into May here, it's going to be back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because we're making our way through that series. So it's going to be season 5. Very exciting. So if you are new to the Cherry Picker, obviously there's Patreon if you want to support us, but you can also watch these episodes on YouTube if you are listening to us. So just go to the Cherry Picker and subscribe to us there. Or if you are watching us on YouTube, you can listen to us as well on all major podcast streaming platforms. So the RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. Follow us on Instagram. That is at the Cherry Picker Pod. Edward, where can they find you individually?
On Instagram individually, you can find me at Edward is Truth, one word. You can do the same thing on Letterboxd, and you can do the same thing on YouTube. Edward is Truth, one word. All traditional spelling. What about you, Zack Cherry?
Yeah, I do have Letterboxd, Zack Cherry. I think there's 2 accounts. I'm gonna fucking say this every time, so this will be the last time I say it. Just go to the
one
that's,
of them gets deleted.
I don't know how, but just go to the one that's like current, like obviously up to date. Also, Instagram is Retro Bitch Face, all one word. Twitter, Zack Cherry 8, and my main YouTube channel, Zack Cherry, ZACKCHERRY. Also, thank you to Andre Felix. I feel like I forget to mention his name sometimes, who is our editor. I did mention him because he nominated Dr. Stone in the Scream episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was a guest in our Scream episode, and he is coming back for. I mean, I'm not going to spoil what he's coming back for, but he's coming back soon, next month. But just in terms of what's coming up next, Edward, do you want to let everyone know?
Okay, is it the one where the thing is not alive and it's not good and it hasn't fallen down?
Oh my gosh. Sure, yeah.
So
do you want to decode that?
I always forget, is it Evil Dead Arise or Evil Dead Arisen? What does it say?
It's Evil Dead Rise.
Oh, why do I think? See, I don't know the title. I'm staying away from the promotional material so emphatically that I don't even know the title. I know it's the new Evil Dead movie. So Evil Dead Rise.
Well, this Evil Dead 5.
Or Arisen.
We'll call it. Yeah.
No, I can say I'll remember it now. You've told me. I think I'll be able to retain that much at least until next week. So Evil Dead Rise.
I mean, even if they put like a 5. If they like change the S to a 5, like Rye 5e.
Evil Dead a Rye 5e. Yeah. A Rye 5e.
So yeah, the brand new Evil Dead movie. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. It's in the theaters, and come back next week to hear our thoughts on it. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will be